You're feeling calmer, you've got more energy, you're sleeping better, you feel better about yourself, you will start to burn off that stress in your body. It's deceptively simple, but it's very, very effective. And I say one of the most transformative things you can do is a micro stress dose is a little dose of stress that in isolation you can easily handle. But when they mount up one on top of the other, they start to add up and they can start to become problematic. So we have all got what I call our own personal stress threshold. And it will probably vary throughout various different days of the week, depending on what we've got going on, depending on how well we've slept, how many balls we're juggling. But we have this stress threshold. So let's say you wake up in the morning and you're feeling calm. You can start accumulating micro stress doses bit by bit. And the more of them you accumulate, the closer you get to your own stress threshold. When you get to your stress threshold, that is when things start to go wrong. That is when you have an unreasonable reaction to an email that you've received. That is when you have an argument with your partner. That is when you scream at your kids when they haven't actually done anything because you have passed your threshold. And I make the case that many of us have had 10 to 15 hits of micro stress before we've walked out of the door in the morning. So what is what is a common scenario these days? Okay, work's stressful. Come back, I'm knackered, I want to unwind. I don't want to go to bed because then it all starts tomorrow. So I'm going to stay up late on Netflix, unwinding and numbing what is going on in my life. So I go to bed late. Right. I set my alarm for 6:30 in the morning because I've got work the next day. Okay, so you're in a deep sleep and at 6:30, your alarm goes off. Boom, micro stress dose number one, because jolting you from a deep sleep is a stressor on the body. You look at the time, which will be on your phone, you look at it, you know what, I've got a few more minutes. You press snooze. At 6:36, boom, alarm hits again, micro stress dose number two. Then you think, you know what, I better get up now. So you grab your phone, whilst you're sort of stretching in bed, let me just look at my email. Oh man, there was 3 work emails yesterday. I didn't get round to doing them. I've got to do that today. MSD, micro stress dose number 3. Then you quickly go onto social media. Oh, you know what, someone's been mean to me on my last post. MSD number 4. Then you realize, oh my God, I've been in bed for 20 minutes. I'm running late now. I really need to get a move on. And I'm not going to keep sort of laboring the points, but you can very easily see how before you even leave the house in the morning, you've picked up 15 MSDs. And what does that mean? That means you are closer to your threshold, which means it's going to take less little hits of micro stress in the day to tip you over. This is why I'm so passionate about having some downtime, having some space in the morning to insulate yourself, make you more resilient. It's not just about reducing the stress in our life where we can. I get some people live difficult lives. Some people don't earn much money. They're working 2 jobs. That is fundamentally stressful. But if you can adopt some of these techniques, and pretty much every single tip in the book is free, and I'm super passionate about that they are accessible to everyone. You know what? You can apply these tools to make yourself more resilient to the stress. So let's say you've got a stressful life. If you're going out of the house with only 2 micro stress doses as opposed to 15, you've got a much bigger buffer before you start to have problems. And so I think that's a useful analogy. I will say though, even if you have had a macro stress dose, one of these big hits of stress, like trauma of some sort, like physical abuse, and I say this with the utmost respect, of course, that needs processing. That needs probably to see a professional and actually untangle that. But if you talk to psychologists, if you talk to therapists, they will tell you that it is even more important in those situations that you apply these principles, because they will help keep you at a level that hopefully you can manage things a bit better than without. So it really, I really do believe that this is a book for everyone, whether you have macro stress doses, micro stress doses, whether you have too much stress in your life or whether you have not enough passion, because these are universal themes. And I do think I have simplified it right down where people will think, you know what? Yeah, you know what? Maybe I can do that. I think I can do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that I think you're absolutely right. And what I like about the book is that it's very practical and solution. I mean, it's called the stress solution. I mean, it's about the solutions, right? And some of these are very easy to implement in your life, like go for a walk, turn your phone off, go to bed early, like, very, very like simple implementable tools. Morning routine, whatever that may look like for you, meditation, mindfulness practices. Some of them are a little bit more ephemeral. I mean, your first bucket here is purpose, and that's a harder thing to kind of figure out for yourself. Everybody has their own relationship to purpose, and I feel like there's a lot of people who live their lives relatively untethered and don't have a sense of purpose, or what we both know the Okinawans call ikigai, which you talk about in the book. And that's a journey, right? So how do you help? I mean, I think that's fundamental, right? If you don't have purpose, then everything else is sort of a house of cards. Well, but that's the hardest one.
That's the hardest one. That's why I started the book with it, because it's the hardest. And I think it's the most important, because fundamentally a life lacking meaning and purpose is inherently a stressful life. Right? It just is. We all know that. The research backs it up. Not having a sense of meaning and purpose in your life is associated with much worse health outcomes. Of course, do we need science to tell us that? No, probably not.
And feeling bad about the fact that you don't know what your purpose is an added stress on top
Absolutely.
of that.
So let me clarify my view on this. So I thought, okay, this is all about practical solutions. Mm-hmm. I, like you, love that Japanese concept of ikigai. Right, I do. I came across it, I think, on a Facebook post a few years ago, and I was, one of my...
It's a Dan Buettner thing from Blue Zones.
I didn't come across it with Dan, actually.
He helped kind of usher it in, because Okinawa is one of the Blue Zones, and their relationship with purpose, which they call ikigai, is fundamental to their longevity and happiness.
For sure. And so one of my Facebook friends, so if you're watching the video, that was inverted commas friends, and to be fair, I'm being slightly... I'm sort of trying to make a point, which is probably not the best way of doing it. But I saw this post, and she put this thing up about ikigai, and I saw these 4 circles, and the middle area was shaded where these 4 things intersect. Mm-hmm. Ikigai is when you find something in your life to do, something that you love, something that you're good at, something that the world needs, and something that pays you money. And I read it, and I think I read this pretty soon after my dad died, which is a very significant moment, clearly, for me. And I remember reading that, and I thought, yeah, I like that. I fancy a bit of ikigai in my life. I want that. And I started to reflect on it and think about it. And then I thought, well, this could be useful for some of my patients. So I started to talk about this idea with my patients, and I found many of them found it quite stressful to think about it. How can I find one thing in my life that gives me this sense of ikigai? That's just too stressful. I'm working to pay the bills and to meet the mortgage payments and to put food on my plate.
You feel ashamed that you can't master that.
And what was super interesting for me is in January, when the book came out in the UK and I was on my tour, I was in London and I spoke about this. And at the end, there was a Q&A, and this Japanese student in London put her hand up. So she asks a question. She says, Dr. Chatterjee, I just want to add to this that I have grown up in Japan, and I have heard about this concept of ikigai, and I found it super stressful my whole life, as I have to live up to this esteemed idea that is embedded in my culture, and I find it stressful, and I can't do it. So that was super interesting. I heard that from my patients. I also heard it from a Japanese student in London. So I sort of pay homage to this in the book, but then I come up with what I call the LIVE framework. I've created a framework that I think, and I've seen very, very practical for people, of how they start to find meaning and purpose in their life. Because I get it. You're listening to this podcast on a train and you're thinking, yeah, meaning and purpose, it's all very well for you two to talk about that. You know what? Your life is different from mine. So it's a very simple framework. L is for love. I is for intention, V is for vision, E is for engagement. Now, we don't necessarily need to unpack the whole thing, but the point about it is you don't need to get all of these from one aspect in your life. You can get them from different aspects in your life, but it's a simple way to start moving you towards finding your meaning and purpose. So what is the first L? The first L is love. It's about passion. Right, so research shows us that regularly doing things that you love helps to make you more resilient to stress. And I'm saying that resilience is super important. But at the same time, being stressed out day in, day out makes it harder to experience pleasure in day-to-day things. So one of the prescriptions I give people, and I don't particularly like the term prescription, but one of the recommendations I make is to have a daily dose of pleasure, even if just for 5 minutes. Now, again, just to bring this to life, I had a patient, 52-year-old chap, or maybe 53, early 50s chap, CFO of a local plastics company, right? Again, comes in to see me. He's worried, doctor, do I have depression? What's going on? I struggle to motivate myself sometimes. I can't concentrate at work. I feel quite indifferent about my relationships. What is going on? So, as always, I try and unpack different aspects of their life. So, do you like your job? Yeah, not really. It's so-so. I have to do it. I've got a family I need to provide for them. I said, okay, fine. How's your relationship with your wife? You know what? So-so. I don't really see her that much. It's fine. Do you have any hobbies? Dog, I don't have time for hobbies. I'm busy. I kept back late. I said, okay, what about weekends? Weekends, I've got to do the household chores. I've got to take the kids to their classes. I don't have time for hobbies. So the prescription I gave him, the recommendation I made to him at the end of doing this, and again, so that I don't get, not that it matters if I get criticized, but just so people understand, I did do the safety netting that was required of me. I didn't feel he was an active suicide risk. I didn't do all these sort of various things that I have to do as a doctor. I did check. But ultimately what I felt was that he didn't have any passion in his life, right? And I said, look, I know you don't do any hobbies now. Did you ever have a hobby? Well, yeah, I guess, when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, I loved playing with train sets. I said, okay, great. Do you have a train set at home? I've got one at home. It's in my attic. I've not seen it for years. I said, okay, look, what I would love you to do when you go home tonight is to get your train set out. Now, you've got a smirk on your face, right?
Yeah.
I get it.
Hey, I have no judgment on people's hobbies. I had a train set when I was a kid.
Well, I thought you were smirking at the fact that he came in to see me with a problem he was concerned about, and my prescription was to get out his train set.
Oh, no, I'm with you on that.
You're with me on that.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
So he agrees to go and do this. So he goes away. I don't see him then. It is not uncommon in general practice in the UK for you not to be able to follow up every single patient. You just simply cannot do that. So I got on with my job. I was, doing my thing. 3 months later, I'd finished my morning clinic, and then we have something called home visits in the UK where, normally after your morning clinic, you will then have a list from reception of people who are maybe elderly, infirm, who can't get out to the practice, and you go and visit them at home to look after them. So I went to the car park to go and do my home visits, and I bumped into his wife. And I said, hey, look, how's your husband getting on? He said, Dr. Chatterjee, I feel like I've got the guy I married back again. He comes home from work, he's straight onto his train set, he's on eBay all the time trying to buy collector's items, and he's subscribed to this monthly collector's magazine now, right? So she's happy.
He's wearing his conductor hat in the house.
Hey, but she's happy, but I still hadn't seen him, right?
Uh-huh.
Again, roughly 3 months later, I'm just going through my clinic as usual, and I see his name pop up, and he has had some blood tests at a well-manned check, and he's coming in to see me to go through them. Welcoming in, and before we go into the blood results, I say, hey, look, how are you getting on? He says, Doc, I feel like a different person. Life is great. I said, my mood's better. I've got energy. I said, okay, cool. How's your job? I love it. I'm really getting a lot out of my job now. How's your relationship with your wife? Really, really good. I feel really close to her. So, just like that case, I don't know how long we've been chatting for, maybe an hour ago, just like that story about the kid who was feeling low and who had a friendship deficiency, did this guy have a mental health problem? Sure, I think he had symptoms that would be consistent. I could have labeled him and given him a diagnosis, right? And of course, sometimes that may be appropriate, although I have issues with labels because I think what that does to people, that's a separate story. Or did this chap really have a deficiency of passion in his life? And the remarkable thing for me is when that passion deficiency gets corrected, not only does he feel better in himself, but everything else in his life starts to come back online. The job that he couldn't stand before, now he enjoys. The relationship that was a bit tired and he felt a bit indifferent about, now he's feeling closer to his wife. And, this is why I'm trying to make the case that this live framework is applicable. It is achievable. If you are listening to this and you want more meaning and purpose and you don't know where to start, I challenge you. When was the last time you did something you love, right? If you haven't done it recently, schedule it in your diary. It doesn't need to be fancy. It doesn't need to be swim run like we did at the start, right? For many of my patients, I say, give yourself 5 minutes a day for a daily dose of pleasure. That could be going for a walk. That could be reading a book, listening to a podcast. It could even be coming home from work, going onto YouTube, finding your favorite comedian and laughing for 5 minutes. So when we say meaning and purpose is unattainable for many people, I disagree, because if you start with small steps, I mean, you could call them hacks. I know you're not a huge fan of the hacking world, and I wouldn't call them hacking in the same sense. I'd call them, you want to get to a certain destination. The destination seems too far away. So let's look at a signpost that's nearby. Let's just break this down, make it super simple. Do something for 5 minutes a day that you enjoy. Do that consistently, week after week, and you will start to find other things in your life that will bring you closer to meaning and purpose. That's just the L, right? But I'm super passionate that we can all find meaning and purpose. Of course, it's harder. This guy didn't find his ikigai, right? This chap I just spoke about, he's not quit his job and is now living on a beach and living his kind of this romantic idea of what a beautiful life looks like. No, he's just found passion in his life, and suddenly his day-to-day life that was monotonous before suddenly is vibrant. And I'm so passionate about this, Rich, because it's not as hard as we think it is. Take small steps.
Small steps are everything. I mean, I think what happens is people, I mean, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, but people see, read, hear this message of follow your passion, and it does have that shame-provoking, unintended consequence to it. And it just seems overwhelming and intimidating, because that gets associated with quitting your job, or, being a digital nomad, or like making these massive, seismic shifts in your life. But that may be the ultimate trajectory if you keep pulling on that thread. Like maybe that train guy is going to reinvent himself and become some kind of, like toy train entrepreneur. Who knows? But more likely than not, it is just having the wherewithal to set aside a little bit of time to take a tiny step to like embrace some aspect of what you love. I mean, that's how it started with me. Like I went back to the swimming pool and jumped in the water. It was nothing more than that. And it's led to me sitting here with you in a manner I could have never predicted in a million years. But the tiny first step that seems meaningless and unconnected to ephemeral concepts like ikigai and passion is where all of these things are seated.
Yeah, for sure. And, this is such a fundamentally important point, not only under the umbrella term of stress, just for our overall well-being, how we feel about ourselves. It's very hard to do that without passion. It's very hard to do that unless there is some overarching objective or direction in your life where you are going. And I get it. Many people don't feel that they can have it. This is why I drill down, I think so hard, how do you make this achievable? How do you bring these kind of really lofty concepts and ideals, and how do you bring them right down to something that someone who's working in a council flat, who's working 2 jobs, who feels that there is no way out, to something that they can apply? And, I know this stuff works because I've been using these tips with real people with busy lives, and you pointed it out. That's it. It's not about necessarily that first step. Of course, that's very important, but who knows what that guy will be doing in 5 years? He's now on the road to that destination. Well, there is no destination, but he's on that road, on that journey towards meaning and purpose, and it starts with those small steps.
Mm-hmm. So we are headed into holiday season, the most stressful time of the year. By the time this podcast comes out, we'll be more in the thick of it. This is the moment where stress peaks, people are with their relatives, they're in high stress situations, there's a lot of pressure to show up for other people, and it pushes people over the edge. So I think it would be really helpful and instructive to kind of provide some guidance for how people can better navigate the minefields of the holiday season.
Yeah, sure. You're right. It is all over the world, I think. Well, certainly in the countries in which we live, it's a time fraught with problems, pressures, external pressures, things that we feel that we have to do. There are so many things that we can do, but the thing that is rising to the surface in me now is think about downtime, right? We need downtime. We thrive on downtime. Our brains thrive on downtime. You simply cannot get up, go on your phone, consume, watch what the world is giving you, reacting, go to after work drinks, go to all these family engagements, come back, lie in bed, consume more. You simply just cannot do that without there being a consequence. You will be accumulating micro stress dose after micro stress dose, and you will go over, and it will lead to family arguments. It will lead to a row with your partner. It will lead to you getting stressed out at work and falling out with your boss. It is all a consequence of that framework of micro stress doses and where is your stress threshold. You need to minimize the micro stress doses, and you need to take active steps to increase your resilience. So, well, let's call it simple. You mentioned a morning routine, right? I'm a huge fan of morning routines. And the framework I create for people is a morning routine has 3 M's, the way I see it: mindfulness, movement, and mindset. So if you want a morning routine, you don't know where to start, think about those 3 M's. Now, you can personalize them to your own life. If you have got an hour in the morning, great. If you've got 5 minutes, you can still do it in 5 minutes. Mindfulness, that could be meditation. It could be breathing. Whatever you want can be mindfulness, whatever appeals to you. Movement, anything you want. Do some push-ups, do some yoga stretches. And then mindset. Mindset is do something to put you in a positive frame of mind. That can be reading a book that you enjoy that makes you feel good. It could be doing some affirmations like I often do with my daughter. Now, to really be clear on this, I have a patient in particular who says, "Doc, these morning routines, they sound great. I'm too busy. I've got to get the kids ready. I don't have time for this." I have persuaded her to try it, and she now sticks religiously to her 5-minute morning routine, right? So my own routine tends to be about half an hour. I have that luxury now. I didn't always. But hers is 5 minutes. So what does she do? Let's break those 3 M's down. First M, mindfulness. She does deep breathing for 1 minute when she gets up, right? She does a breath that I've taught her that I really like called the 3-4-5 breath. When she breathes in for 3, she holds for 4, and she breathes out for 5. Now, that is 1 breath. In the book, there is a whole breathing menu with 6 different breaths. If you don't like that one, don't do it. Choose one that you do like. So that's her 1 minute of breathing. Then what does she do? For her next 2 minutes, she does some sun salutations that she learned in a yoga class. Just 2 minutes. Then what she does, she reads a book that she likes. She keeps 5 books there, and she picks one. She reads a few pages. Just the act of having 5 minutes to herself in that morning actually transforms the rest of her day. This particular patient had really bad eczema. Her eczema has gone down dramatically since she started doing this morning routine. When you understand the physiology, of course that makes sense. Stress ultimately impacts the immune system. Eczema actually, at its core, is a slight dysfunction of certain parts of the immune system. Therefore, if you can impact the immune system, you stand a chance that you actually might be able to reduce your eczema. Not in every case, but in this case. So have some time to yourself. Really be mindful of that. And if you find a morning routine helpful, start there. Now, the next thing I'd probably say to people is think about how much you've moved, right? Yes, we know physical activity is important, but fundamentally, if we go back to 2 million years ago, when we think about our stress response, what is the stress response designed to do? It is priming us for physical activity. Nowadays, the stresses are coming in such a way like, we're sitting on our butts at our desk and our email inbox is stressing us out. Or the fact that actually, oh man, I am exhausted today, but everyone at work's going out tonight, and then my sister's flying into town tonight. Oh man, I just want to go to sleep, right? So I would say, have you moved enough? Just ask yourself, have you moved? If you haven't, just make it a priority every day to do something. Even if it's a 10-minute walk at lunchtime, put your phone down, go outside for 10 minutes, and you will start to burn off that stress in your body. Well, those are two simple things, right? When you're traveling, if you're traveling to go and see your family, right? And this applies not in the holiday season as well, that people are traveling to work and they're getting stressed out. Use that travel time to really look after your mental health, right? Don't put the news on. Don't listen to what Trump has just tweeted, right? Own your mental space. Own what's going on in there. Use that time to listen to relaxing music. Listen to an inspiring podcast. Pull up the Calm meditation app on your phone and put your headphones in and meditate for 10 minutes. I am not asking you to do 3 hours of yoga every day, even though that will help you, right? I'm asking you to just think about, have I given myself a bit of time today? If you are getting stressed out at a party, your family are there, your mother is stressing you out, right? Your mother-in-law, let's say, or whatever, check in with your breath. It's a cliche. It is the biggest cliche, just breathe. If people understood what breathing actually does, on a fundamental physiological level, we would all be practicing it every day. Breathing is information for your body. When you're feeling stressed, when you've got deadlines that you're working away for, you will not realize, but your breathing will change. You will start to breathe more from your chest than your diaphragm. You'll breathe quicker. Your breaths will be more shallow. And what does that do? That sends messages to your brain that I am in danger, that there is a problem. And that gets you in a vicious loop where you start to breathe faster. Now, the great news about that is that you can very easily change that situation. If you consciously change your breathing, you can change your physiology. So if that's happening, you're at a party, whatever, there's a work do, you know what, maybe go to the restroom or go outside and just for 2 minutes, breathe. Do the 3-4-5 breath. If you don't like that one, do a box breath where you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4. I guarantee if you do that for 1 minute or 2 minutes, you will feel calmer, and the way you deal with that situation will absolutely, it will change. Mm-hmm. You will be less reactive. I'm very much informed by my almost 2 decades now of seeing patients. Not everyone with the information actually goes and does anything. And I thought, well, why is that? And I've always been fascinated as to which patients can make change and which patients can't. And is there a common factor? Now, I figured out early on that actually there was a couple of tricks you can use to help people make change and transform their lives. But I figured out that you've got to start small with most people. Now, not with everyone, and we can get to that, but with most people, you've got to start small. And, I think the best example to illustrate it was this patient who, 42-year-old chap that I saw in my surgery. He had a lot of problems that actually many people listening to this right now are probably also facing. He was a little bit overweight. He was struggling with his mood, and he was low in energy. Very, very common problems. And Rich, I remember sitting down with him, and it was quite clear to me that there were various aspects in his lifestyle that were probably at play. We discussed a number of options. And the option he really liked was strength training. And he was like, yeah, doc, I love it. Strength training, I get it. It's going to help me with my mood. It's going to help me feel better. It's going to help me lose weight. I'm in. I've not done it since I was a teenager. Brilliant. And he goes, what do you want me to do? 40 minutes, 3 times a week. I said, hey, look, that'll be amazing if you can do that. And he goes off, right? So this is the key. He's got the motivation at that point. He's ready to go. He's like, got a smile. I'm going to do this. 1 month later, when he comes back in for follow-up, right, he walks in like a different person. So his shoulders have rolled round a little bit. He's a bit sheepish. And I said, hey, look, how are you getting on? How was the gym? What's been going on? And he said, doc, look, you know what? I've not really been. Work's been super busy, super stressful. The gym's not really that close to me. I've just not ended up going. And Rich, why that is such an influential consultation for me is because I remember sitting there thinking, I didn't think as many people expect me to have thought, why has he not done what I've asked him to do? I just thought, Rangan, you've clearly not given him advice that he feels is relevant for him in the context of his life. And so I took off my jacket and I said, right, I'm going to teach you a workout right now. So I taught him this 5 bodyweight exercises, modified them for his ability. And I said, can you do them? He goes, yeah, no problem. I said, okay, can you do this? I want you to do this 5 minutes twice a week. And he looked at me and he said, what, 10 minutes a week? I said, yeah, can you manage that? He goes, yeah, of course I can manage that. I was like, okay, I'll see you in 4 weeks. He goes off 4 weeks later, he comes back, Rich. And he walked in, big smile on his face, chest puffed out. I said, how you doing? And he said, Doc, I feel amazing. Like you said, do 5 minutes twice a week. I found it so easy. I do that workout for 10 minutes every evening before I have my evening meal. And that was 70 minutes of strength training a week, right? He couldn't do 40 minutes 3 times a week. By making it super easy, he feels good. He increases it not because I asked him to, but because he wanted to. And then he was doing that for a good 5 years, right? 70 minutes of strength training for 5 years. And that led to what I've written about that I call the ripple effects. From there, he was eating better, sleeping better. And now he gets up each morning and does a breathwork practice. This stuff was not on his radar 6, 7 years ago, right? It just wasn't. But by making it small, by making it achievable, not only can he do it, his identity changes along the way. And I think that's why I think this book has proved so successful and popular with certainly people here in the UK, is because it works. It's based on 20 years clinical experience that I've got, but also when I think last time I saw you, actually, I'd maybe just come back from seeing BJ Fogg in up in Santa Rosa on his boot camp. And BJ, who's arguably one of the world's leading experts in human behavior, certainly I feel that he is. He said it was such a beautiful meeting because he looked at the book and he said some really nice things about it. He said it's one of the best habit change programs he's ever come across, deceptively simple but remarkably effective, which was so humbling to get that from someone like that. But what was really interesting, I've come to see patients and habit change from clinical experience. So I've come to it not from research. I'm not a researcher. I've come to it from what I have seen work with real people with busy lives. BJ's come to it from scientific research. And then there's a beautiful meeting, which is why we hit it off so much. He's like, oh, your clinical experience is replicating exactly what my scientific research is saying. And it was lovely to sort of see that. And I'm really passionate that I'm not a researcher. I keep abreast of the research. But as we've spoken about before, Rich, I'm about results. I'm about helping the person in front of me. If I'm not able to help them, I'm like, well, you've got to do better, Rangan. You've got to find another way of connecting, and you've got to find another way of making them feel that they want to do this.
I had forgotten that you did the boot camp with BJ, and we were going to talk about that when you were on your way over. And I've since been going back and forth with BJ, trying to get him on the podcast. I think his work is incredible, and it's impossible to read your book and not think about the work of BJ Fogg, the work of Charles Duhigg, the work of James Clear, like these people who have really pushed the boundaries in terms of helping us understand how we form habits, how we break them, how we create new ones. And if there's an overarching kind of theme in all of their work, it's that you have to distill these things down into very tiny, actionable changes that fit within the construct of your life. And the way you kind of articulated in your book is by using this idea of bending. Like, don't bend life around the demands of your program, create it such that it bends around the way that your life is constructed. And when you shared that example of the guy who wanted to start a strength training program, I'm sure when he said, oh, I'm going to go to the gym a couple times a week, it doesn't sound daunting. He's not conscious of the fact that his environment and the constraints of his job are not as conducive to making that happen as reality ends up dictating, right? So the only way to get him to form the new habit is to break it down into a bite-sized chunk that's so preposterously small that it doesn't feel like it moves the needle at all, but it creates this a starting point and then an emotional attachment to the behavior. And then ultimately momentum, which almost has like this ethereal spiritual energy. Like once you have momentum, these habits become self-perpetuating. And I don't know what that's about precisely, but I've seen it in my own life. Like it's so hard to begin something, but once you kind of begin that process and become more and more invested in it, it becomes easy. So why is it easy when you have momentum and so hard to begin?
That's a great question, Rich. You know, the sort of the magic of momentum. What is going on there? Look, I think it's how we're wired as humans, right? It's as BJ talks about, and as I've seen, it's not the repetition that wires in the behavior; it's the emotion, right? We're human beings. Basically,
Right.
what we were talking about right at the start, we are social beings. We've got feelings. We like to connect with others, and when we feel good, right, we want to feel that again, which is why a big part is how do you help yourself feel good after you've done something. It's a really important part of behavior change. And actually, you talk about momentum, like even if you talk about something like the Calm meditation app and lots of wellness apps, they've got streaks. You know, they know that we thrive with momentum. And I remember when I was using Calm religiously last year for a period of time, when I got to like 40 days or 41 days, I was like, oh man, I don't want to break my streak. Like I don't want to start at zero again. I'm going to have to keep going. We know that that's how we're wired as humans. So I think momentum is very, very important. But I think also on that theme, Rich, I'd say that it's also the way we look at these good habits. Right? We don't look at them in the same way as bad habits. So in a bad habit, in inverted commas, bad, right? I'm sort of moving away from calling things good or bad. You know, all these behaviors serve a purpose in some way, right? Let's say you've got something. Let's say for 5 minutes a day consecutively, I asked you to get a full-fat soft drink of your choice, like, you know, let's say it's a cola brand. And for 5 consecutive minutes, I asked you to drink that, right? You know, it wouldn't surprise you, would it? If after a few days, your teeth start to feel a little bit sore, you know, you don't sleep as well, you're a bit moody. Or if I asked you to smoke a cigarette for 5 continuous minutes every day, it wouldn't surprise you that after a few days, you'd be coughing a little bit, your mouth wouldn't feel great, okay? So we know with bad habits, we see how quickly they can add up to causing problems. But when we flip it and we look at, you know, so-called good habits or the habits that we're trying to bring in, well, we look at it a completely different way. We think it's got to be really hard. It's got to be punishing. I've got to deprive myself. I've got to really push it and hit it hard in the gym, or it doesn't count. And we completely bias the way we look at it. But, you know, toothbrushing is a great example. You know, we brush our teeth for 2 minutes in the morning, 2 minutes at night, 4 minutes a day. We know that's going to look after our dental health by and large for life.
And we don't do the hour and a half brush on the weekend.
Exactly. You know, that's why I often say, you don't not brush in the week and go, hey, you know what? I'm going all in on Sunday. I'm having the 1 hour deep clean today.
Right.
You know, we don't do that. We know a little bit regular makes the difference. And, you know, what's really interesting is you can look at other industries outside health and see how they've got this down. So business, Amazon, right? Amazon, you know, I think certainly now must be one of the world's biggest companies, right? They estimates say about 5 years ago, Rich, when they moved to one-click ordering, reports say their profits went up by $300 million a year.
I would have thought it would have been even higher than that.
Maybe it was.
Yeah, the more seamless you make it. Yeah, I understand the point.
Exactly, they get it. They understand if you make something easy, if you don't have 4 or 5 steps to make a decision, where each step is a reason to back out of making that decision. You make it easy, people buy more. Netflix, YouTube, they all do the same thing. They roll one video into the next, so it's easy. So before you have a chance to think, oh, I need to stop, I need to go to sleep, you're into the next episode, right? I'm not criticizing those companies. I get it. They've got an understanding of behavior science and they use it for their industry. And I'm saying when it's health, we don't apply the same rules. We think when it comes to our health, we've got to make it hard.
But our environments are not always optimally conducive to making the healthy choice. If you're walking past soda machine after soda machine, and when you're driving your car, you're constantly passing fast food restaurants, there's a temptation in that inherent environment that is leading people towards the easy, unhealthy choice. And in terms of creating the healthy environment, I'm thinking about what Dan Buettner does with his Blue Zones project, going to these cities and getting them to create bike lanes and getting rid of the vending machines and changing the environment so the environment is conducive to the healthy behaviors and the healthy choices. Because his whole thesis, which is not dissimilar from your own, is that unless the environment is conducive to that kind of, productive, positive change, human beings, because of their psychological, malfunctioning or whatever it is, the way that we're wired, we're gonna repeat the unhealthy behavior. Like, we have to make it so that it's easier and more accessible. For, just like the example of the guy you just used, like the gym was out of the way. It's not on the way to or from work, so his environment was not conducive to him going there. So you have to craft a new solution, put it in the home so it's easier, it's at hand's reach.
Hey, I agree. I love Dan's work, and I agree, right? If our environments made the healthy choice the easy choice, we wouldn't need this conversation, right?
Right.
People would generally be, as they have done in the blue zones for many years, they would by default be making healthy choices because that's what, the environment supports around them. So I support that work, and I think, yes, or governments, councils, schools, workplaces should all be seeking to change the environments to support healthy choices, which would actually make people much more productive as well. In workplaces, for example, yes, they would actually be much more productive. So I think there's a business case as well as a health case to do that. But again, going back to one of the themes early on, we've got to also deal with the environment the way it currently is right now. And the ideal of changing these environments, I think we should be advocating for it. I think what Dan's doing, going into schools, changing them, creating these new blue zones, I am all for that. But I don't think it also means we don't need to empower individuals as well, because frankly, much of the world is living in a challenging environment, particularly now. And actually, here's the thing. I always say to people, control the environment you can control. Okay, so you can't control the environment outside your front door. You can take a few steps to try and limit or reduce the likelihood is that you're going to get tempted, but you can't control that. You can control your home environment. You can control what you do in your home. You can control whether you do some of these 5-minute health snacks a day. And I have seen that if you do those things, because of the change in identity that they cause, you then are much more likely to make better choices outside, even when faced with the temptation. And I think that comes down to momentum as well. It's kind of, you're doing these 3 5-minute health snacks a day and you're feeling calmer, you've got more energy, you're sleeping better, you feel better about yourself, which I think is really important. That I think that starts to translate into the choices you make outside when the environment is challenging. And so as I say, you can do short term, you can do long term, or you can do both.
I like how you phrase it as health snacks. Basically, the book is broken up into these 3 sections: mind, body, and heart. And within each section, you kind of break down a variety of different practices that all can be applied in 5-minute intervals 3 times a day, but you call them snacks, right? So they're almost like treats to yourself.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a play on words, of course. There, only one of the health snacks is actually a real snack. Everything else is not food related. But interesting, Rich. Even though food isn't a big part of this book has helped so many people lose weight. Right? The amount of messages I've got from people saying this program, and you've read it, you might be thinking, how is this helping people lose weight? But the reason is, And I think why it's so effective, and this is not for weight loss, this is for anything basically, this is for any one of us to help us thrive in our lives. But the whole conversation around weight is often about food choices. And of course, food choices are important, but what are we seeing in this pandemic? We're seeing a huge amount of weight gain, right? Huge amounts of weight gain. Now, if you look into the research, it is very clear. There was a US study which showed that 79%, so nearly 80% of people change their eating behavior in response to stress. About 45% will eat more, about 35% will eat less. So what's just gone on for the last 4 or 5 months? Probably one of the most stressful times in your lifetime and in my lifetime. So many people are facing unprecedented levels of stress. So of course, a certain section of that, those 45%, are going to be eating more of probably unhelpful foods to help them cope with the stress. So therefore, it stands to reason if you help people cope with their emotional health, with their mental health, which is what my program helps people do, well, of course, it's going to lead to a lot less stress eating. And I feel strongly that in the weight loss conversation, the book after this that I'm writing at the moment is on weight loss, because I feel the whole thing that we're missing in the weight loss conversation, there's lots of what we eat, what diet should we eat, what we should be eating. It's like, okay, fine. There's some principles about what we should be eating that, there can be debates about, but I think 85, 90% of the principles are pretty well established in terms of what people should be doing. But why are we still struggling with weight gain? Well, we're not addressing why we're eating. We're not addressing the fact that we used to use food to address a hole in our stomach, but now we're using food to address a hole in our hearts. When we're stressed, we eat. When we're lonely, we eat. When we're bored, when we eat. When we have discomfort that we don't want to pay attention to, we eat. And again, I get it. I understand why people would do that. I will, if I'm feeling low sometimes or feeling a bit stressed, I may go to something sweet. That's not because I'm weak. That's because I'm a human being who uses food as a way of coping. So I find it so interesting. I knew this program would, because I've seen it with patients, but it's interesting to see the public response that, oh, this is helping me lose weight and it's not addressing my diet.
Yeah. I mean, there's food addiction, and that's a certain category of people who have an extremely unhealthy relationship with what they're putting in their mouth. But most people, perhaps all people, use food to regulate their emotional state. And I think most of us are completely unaware of the extent to which that's true. Whether it's a chocolate bar or ice cream or what have you. There's the examples of, feeling depressed and trying to self-medicate. But I think that we do it much more rampantly than we're aware. And a lot of these tools, these snacks that you relate in the book, are really related to bringing you more into the present, being more mindful, paying attention to not just your environment, but yourself, your body, your emotional state. And I don't just feel like, I know that the more present that you can be in your life, the more self-aware that you are, then you become like these unconscious urges that you're doing compulsively without even being aware. You're suddenly aware of them. And the more awareness you bring to that, the more you realize that it's an unhealthy habit that's worthy of redress.
Yeah, and many people are too busy for that awareness. They're rushing around, they're getting up, they're on the emails, they're on the social, they're sort of rushing around, taking their kids somewhere. There's never any solitude, there's never any silence. They're consuming the news and then they're worrying about what's going to happen in the world. And you mentioned environment, but it's really interesting is when you do these health snacks, once you start paying attention, once you start to understand how you're feeling, and you just tap in, you just get a little window as to what it can feel like. That then translates it's that mindfulness actually permeates into your life so that when you're out and about later and you are tempted, you're like, of course, I'm feeling stressed. I've not been for my morning walk today. That's why I'm craving that chocolate bar. And again, it's about then you can make a choice with the awareness. One patient who slightly unrelated, but just to show you when you get that awareness. So I had this I can't remember how old she was, probably sort of late 40s. She was she was married. She had 3 children. She had these awful migraines, and she'd been having them for years. And she didn't really like taking migraine tablets that she had been prescribed before. The bad side effects, they didn't really work very well. And I remember the first few consultations, I really felt there's a huge stress component here. I think she was a lawyer, actually, Rich, and sort of
Shocking.
Shocking, exactly.
Yeah.
As she was rushing around. And I was trying to sort of suggest, hey, look, let's look at some ways to manage this. And she goes, oh, you're going to tell me about yoga, right? You've tried yoga. I'm not interested. I don't have time for yoga. I was like, okay. Let's see.
Not just a lawyer, a very British lawyer.
Exactly. And it was so interesting that actually what we agreed on ultimately is that we tried a few things. They wouldn't work. She kept coming back saying, I told you nothing's going to work. This is just the way my life is. And then it turned out that she really liked adult coloring books, which are a huge rage here in the UK because it's default mindfulness, right? And she goes, we had a long conversation. She agreed. She's like, okay, that sounds interesting. She goes, when are we going to have time? And again, I started to apply with her some of the rules of habit change, behavior change that I sort of summarize and outline in the book. And I said to her, look, okay, tell me about your morning. She says, okay, look, I wake up about 6:30. There's mayhem. The children are running around. I need to get them ready for school. This was obviously pre-pandemic. And, but I'll go down and make myself a cup of tea. And, of course, we're in England. She would be making herself a cup of tea. And I said, okay, that sounds perfect. What do you do then? She goes, well, I just sort of posture around. I sort of try and get the kids ready. I said, look, do you need motivation to make yourself a cup of tea? She's like, no, I'm going to do that. I said, okay, so this is one of those rules. Let's stick on this new behavior onto a behavior that you're already doing without thinking about it. So onto an existing habit, basically. So she said, okay. So I said, okay, what you've got to do, we want to leave the coloring pad and we want to leave the pens next to the kettle in the kitchen. And we can dissect why these things are so important, but it sounds really basic, but it's so, so important. So in a nutshell, she would come down, she would make her cup of tea, and for 5 minutes while she was drinking her cup of tea, she would do adult coloring in. And she started to tap into what it felt like when the noise just shut down in her mind. She wasn't accessing that at all, Rich. And within about 4 or 5 days, her migraines had gone down by sort of 40, 50% or so. And a couple of months later, she was hardly getting them anymore. Now, I'm not saying that happens with every migraine sufferer, but the point is it was stress that was driving a huge part of her migraines. She needed a way to access a state where she could switch off her stress state and activate her sort of thrive and relaxation state. And for her, it was coloring books. Right? For someone else, it might be something different, but for her, it was that. And by applying some simple rules of habit change, number one, the most important one, you got to make it easy. Number two, stick it onto a behavior that you are already doing. People ignore this stuff, right? They hear it and they go, yeah, but I don't need to follow those rules. I can fit it in at other times. No. If people are listening to this now and they think back to behaviors they've tried to incorporate into their lives in the past and ask themselves, did they follow both of those rules? And I bet for most people, if they hadn't managed to make it stick, one of those things wasn't at play. And so for her, it was transformative. And again, in terms of making it easy, you've got to leave the coloring book there. You've got to leave the crayons there. Because if you come down in the morning and put the kettle on and that's not there, it's like, you know what, I don't have time today anyway. Forget it. I'll do it tomorrow. And again, you talked about momentum. This is momentum the other way. Before you know it, it's 3, 4, 5 days before you've done it. And it's something you used to do rather than something you're still doing. And again, I'm just sharing that to show you just how versatile this approach is and how it literally works for everyone. Downtime is so fundamentally important for our brains. And just to make it super clear for people and make it really practical and accessible in their own life, right? we used to think that when we stop focusing on a task in front of us, we used to think that our brains would go to sleep, right? That is not what happens. There is a part of the brain called the default mode network, or the DMN, that goes into overdrive when we stop focusing on a task in front of us. So what does that part of the brain do? Well, it does many, many things. Two of the ones I think are hyper relevant here are the DMN helps you to solve problems and it helps you to be more creative, right? So this is the reason why so many of us come up with our best ideas when we go for a walk, or if you're like me, when you're in the shower, right? Because you have disconnected, you're not focused on something, so your brain does what it wants to do, which is help you and solve problems for you. So I would hypothesize, and I look forward to hearing what happens on this timeout for you. I would imagine you are going to get a ton of creative ideas, stuff that have been bubbling away there that is potentially, I recognize you go for long runs, so I'm sure ideas come up.
Yeah, I mean, the running and the swimming is a part of that for me, but I get what you're saying. And that is part of the intention as well. Like I have other books that I want to write, but this takes up so much time that it's very difficult for me to carve out the amount of solitude required to actually write another book.
For sure. But for someone listening to this who's just heard what I said about the default mode network, I'd really love them to take a minute and think, how can I access that sort of creativity and problem-solving ability in my day-to-day life? And one of my top tips for people, I speak to in a lot of companies now about employee wellness, and I say one of the most transformative things you can do is take a tech-free lunch break, even if it's just for 15 minutes, right? Because what that does is that you fire up the DMN. You will come back more productive. Your stress levels will have come down. You will have more energy. Problems that you couldn't solve in the morning, you will start to solve in the afternoon. And it's such a simple little thing. It's, for want of a better term, it's a hack, right? But there is incredible science around what that actually does. Many of us, if we work in an office, we're sitting there typing away on our computer, on our emails. Oh, it's lunchtime. Okay, pull it out, right? Let's have a look at Instagram. Let's go on my personal email, right? Again, no judgment. I also do that much of the time. But you will start to tap in to this innate potential that your brain has when you give it downtime. I made a show for ITV in the UK last year on stress, right? And what did we do as part of that show? We took 3 people and we measured their heart rate variability 24 hours a day for 3 days. Now that is, we don't need to go down that road, but that is just a measure of your stress levels. Mm-hmm. You want a lot of variability from one beat to the next. That shows you are constantly able to adapt to a changing environment around you. If there is no variation or little variation, it means you have taken on a lot of stress and you are unable to adapt. So it's a bit of a marker of resilience as well. Now, one of these people in particular, he was a manager. I don't know how old he is, about 40 years old, I'm going to guess. Manager, working super hard in his company, wants to lead by example. So gets in early, works right through lunch, stays late working. Now, he obviously applied to come on the show because he was feeling super stressed. He was drinking a bit too much. It was affecting his relationship with his wife. I mean, these are common themes, right? And we measured things. We measured his stress levels. We had an objective measurement. So what was really clear is when he was in the office, he started off the day pretty low stress. They start to go up. At lunchtime, they kept going up. Mm-hmm. They kept staying high. In the afternoon, they kept staying high. He'd leave work late. His stress levels are pretty high when he's coming back home. And consequently, there were a lot of compensatory behaviors on the back of that. All I did with him in the week, was suggest to him that he takes a 15-minute break at lunchtime without his phone. Now, he was super lucky because very near his office, there was a river, right? So he had a bit of nature. So all this guy does, at lunchtime, phone goes in the drawer, he walks for 15 minutes around a river and comes back. Now, we did that for a couple of weeks. We re-put the tracking devices on him. Objectively, huge difference. Stress levels, again, mounting up in the morning, but at lunchtime, they almost reset back to normal, okay? So he's, again, starting off the afternoon very far away from his stress threshold, to use my initial analogy. In the afternoon, they're not going up anywhere near as high as they did before, and that's impacting his behaviors in the evening. So objectively, we've seen a difference. That's important, but not as important as his own subjective experience, at least not to me. What did he feel? He says, Doc, I've got more energy. I'm more productive in the afternoon. I'm actually finishing work early now. And he's not drinking as much and he feels closer with his wife, right? So the point I'm trying to make is that may sound super, super trivial. Oh, what, go for a walk? Yeah, I've heard that before. No, go for an intentional walk at lunchtime without your phone. I guarantee if you do that for 7 days in a row, you will start to feel a difference. Probably not even for 7 days, you will start to feel a difference. And so it is such an important tip. You fire up that part of your brain. And, I don't think it's just the walk for him or just the downtime. Nature is very powerful as well, what it does for your stress levels. Simply being in nature lowers levels of the stress hormone cortisol. It is utterly remarkable. Many theories, but have you heard of fractals?
I was just going to say that I wrote it down here. And as you were talking, I was like, oh, here's the moment where I'm going to interject about fractals. Because that was when I said at the very beginning of the podcast, there were a couple things I did not know about that I wanted to talk to you about. That was one of them.
Oh my God.
What is going on here?
Okay, so that's because we've got such a deep connection from actually never having met each other apart from in a podcast studio. No, it's fractals are, fractals are a shape. They're a particular kind of geometrical shape that you only get in nature. You get it in rivers, in coastlines, in leaves, on trees. That's where you get fractals. And the research suggests that when a human being looks at a fractal, something happens, right? The act of looking at a fractal means that your stress hormone cortisol starts to come down simply from looking and being in nature. Now, that was remarkable when I read it, and I looked at the research. But then as I was diving deep into this, I found some more research which suggests that even if you can't get into nature, if you just look at a picture of nature, you also start to lower your stress levels as well. Not to the same degree, I don't think, but nonetheless. So there is something uniquely powerful around nature. Simply being in nature will lower your stress levels. And so I think, going back to that story, I think, if you are lucky enough to live near some green space or you work near some green space and at lunchtime you can go and access that, great. If not, look at a picture. If not, right, there's a section in there which I've entitled Staring at a Tree. And I say, you know what? Go outside, sit on a chair somewhere and stare at a tree for 5 minutes. You will lower your stress levels. And so, but Rich, on one level, does this not make sense that we are hardwired as human beings to being in nature? Does it actually surprise you that much that there is research to back up what you intuitively feel?
Mm-hmm. No, it's common sense. And what I love about basically almost everything that you said today is that these are all tiny little things, but there's something about the aggregation of them that can accumulate to really combat, this epidemic of stress that we're experiencing. And I think what happens is, and I'm sure you've experienced this with your patients, is that when you embark on one of these small little things, whether it's a walk down to the river or the 5 minutes of mindfulness practice in the morning, once you start to feel a little bit better, that creates an emotional connection with that practice that then encourages you to do more, and then a momentum begins. And once you have momentum, it becomes a lot easier to do these things, and then you want more, and before you know it, your life shifts. And I think what happens with people is they look at a little practice like that and they're like, well, how much difference can that make? And they just dismiss it, right? Or they think, I need to lose 50 pounds, or they set some crazy goal, but then they are short-sighted about the work that's required or the time period that is rational to achieve that. And when they don't achieve the results that they seek in a compressed period of time, they lose hope. And my encouragement is always to take a longer view. Like, I think that we overestimate the changes that we can make in this short period while forsaking, I think, the huge changes that can be seen a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, that are achievable through these very small, bite-sized little practices.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the exact approach that I take, that I've seen work not only in my own life, because I have a slight A-type tendency to sort of go all in or all out.
Right, me too.
as my the amount
Meditate,
of hours
or I'm going to do it an hour in the morning. Like,
Yeah,
what's this
exactly.
5 minutes stuff?
Exactly.
And then I burn out.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, and then
it's not for me.
And then a month goes by before I'll just do 5 minutes again.
Yeah.
I think that's a common thing too.
Yeah, this is sort of kind of demonstrated by my 2 hours on YouTube swimming videos every night at the moment, right? But this is kind of, this is actually the subject that I'm unpacking in my third book, Feel Better in 5. That's actually exactly what I'm looking at, is how do you create, what is the science of behavior change? And what was super fascinating for me is when you delve into the science, it actually supports exactly what we've been talking about. It's so beautiful. It was so, and obviously you want to, let's come back to why I didn't come to your event on Friday, okay? Because you didn't want to cover that.
It's all right, man. I can give you a little bit of shit
but it's relevant for this story, because the reason I couldn't come in the end. So I remember seeing the post on Instagram, and you said you're doing your first live event, and as a fan, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be in LA at the same time, or I could be in LA if I just shift things a bit. I can come. So I text my buddies like, hey, should we all go to Rich's event on Friday? Sorted everything out. Obviously, then schedules changed and all kinds of things came in, and I was trying to, I wanted to talk to BJ Fogg.
Right.
Because I've been looking into some of his research the last few months, and I thought, hey, I don't know how far he is from LA, but maybe I can interview him whilst I'm here. And I contacted BJ, and he said, hey, Rangan, look, while you're here, I'm running my 2-day boot camp. And I wanted to attend 12 months ago, but I couldn't fit it in. And I've heard rave reviews about it. And so I had to do a lot of personal wrestling in myself. What am I going to do here? And then I looked into, I thought, I can cut it fine. I can leave an hour early on the Friday. I get to LAX at 7:30. I text my buddy and say, if I land at LAX at 7:30, how far is the Wilshire Theatre from there? Can I make it? Yeah. He goes, man, I think you're going to be cutting this a little bit too fine. And then I was thinking, honestly, I thought, so
that's not part of the stress solution.
Yeah, I thought you're going to go to boot camp. You're not going to properly engage in it because you're going to be thinking about the time. There's other factors in there, but ultimately I didn't come. But the reason for bringing that up is because I wanted to talk about BJ Fogg in the sense that what I unpacked when doing his research is that it ultimately is these small changes when done consistently that lead to those big ones. The research is out there to support that. But what fascinates me so much is this is what I've figured out intuitively as a clinician who listens to patients and watches what tends to work and what tends not to work. Because anybody can lose weight over 2 or 3 weeks if they go on a crash diet. They can, right? You can follow any diet book out there and you can go all in, and you will probably, if you stick to that, will probably lose weight. But the question then is, will that still be there in 6 months? Will it be there in 2 months, in 12 months? More often than not, it is not. And I found, as I say, to beat the same drum, it is not necessarily about those big changes. Of course, some people can do that. I am not trying to take away from people's experience if that is the way they have done it. Great. Good luck to you. But if you have struggled to make consistent, significant progress in your lifestyle, if you listen to your podcast and you get inspiration each week, but you still feel, hey, that sounds great, but I don't know where to start, I would say, find one thing you heard us talk about today that resonates with you, that you think you want to do. Don't pick something that you don't want to do. Pick something that you do want to do. Figure out how you can introduce a very small change in that area consistently for the next few days and then reassess. And I bet you, more often than not, you're going to feel good about yourself. Your identity is going to change because suddenly what happens then, oh, I'm the kind of person who can make behavior change. Right? Oh, I've done that for the last 5 days. That has always been my approach to patients. Set the bar super low. Set it low. Patient meets that, able to do it, feels good, and then they, by themselves, start raising the bar. Meditation. One patient I asked, once I made a deal with her, I said, what can you commit to? She told me, I can't do meditation. It's not for me. I've tried doc. I said, okay. What do you think you can do? Can you do 10 minutes a day? Yeah, maybe. I said, okay. Can you do 5? Maybe. I said, okay, how about this? Can you do 1 minute a day? 1 minute? Yeah. Okay, sure, I could do 1 minute. I said, okay, look, can you commit to me now, for the next few weeks, you're going to do 1 minute a day? Okay, yeah, I can do 1 minute a day. I said, fine, let's do 1 minute a day. I'll give you an extra tip here. The best way to create a new habit is to stick it on to an existing habit that you are already doing without thinking about it. So what do you do first thing in the morning? I go out and put the kettle on and make a cup of tea. This is the UK, right? So we make tea. So I said, okay, fine. What do you do when you put the kettle on and while the water is boiling? I'll probably just flick on my phone a little bit, have a little check on the internet. I said, okay, fine. So why not, is this acceptable to you? Every morning you are going to make a cup of tea. You don't need to think about that. Yeah. Why not at that time you do 1 minute of meditation? She says, okay, yeah, I can do that. So you're not having to find any extra time in your day to fit this in. She goes away. She starts doing this. 1 month later, she's doing 10 minutes a day, right? Because what happens, she does it every day for a few days. She does it for a week. She's like, but it's not so bad. I can do this. And then that 1 minute becomes 2 minutes. That 2 minutes becomes 5 minutes. That 5 minutes becomes 10 minutes. That is the approach I have seen over and over again work for people. Please, if you are struggling, take something from that. Put that into your practice, not next Monday, right? Maybe put it into practice tomorrow. Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying this conversation, there's loads more like it on my channel. Please do press subscribe and hit that bell. Now, back to the conversation. We've all got our strengths, the things we like doing. And often we all of us, myself included, neglect the weak spots.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's been really gratifying since the book came out, a lot of people have contacted me and said, you know what? In fact, the lady who helped me design the book, she said to me, I've always thought I was really fit and well. You know, I do Pilates regularly, I walk every day, but that section on heart, I do nothing. Like I literally do nothing. And since working on the book, she started to phone a friend every evening, and she can't get them. She sends them a really personal message on text or WhatsApp. And she has said to me, Ron, it's transformed the way I feel. My other behaviors that I engage in that I'm trying to stop are almost just falling by the wayside because I'm addressing my heart health, my human connection side of health. And so she was fit in inverted commas because, you know, weight's good. She's done Pilates. She's doing all the things that we think and associate with wellness. But there's a blind spot there. And the thing I really think is really really effective, what I'm really proud of about this plan, it's like BJ says, it's deceptively simple, but it's very, very effective because you're covering each day mental health, physical health, and heart health. Now, if you want to do more, if you want to do a half-hour meditation, go for your life. If you want to have a long workout or a long run or a long bike ride, as I will often do, great, but I still do that 5-minute strength workout. It's not a substitute. So it's like toothbrushing for everything else in my life.
Yeah, I think that's solid guidance. I think the key, even when you have the impulse to do more, at least initially in the early phases, to resist that temptation. Because if you establish a pattern of, let's say, oh, well, when I go to the gym, I do an hour, then you feel like the next day or a week later, if you don't do an hour, that you're falling short. I think it's better to start with 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then create momentum around that. And then if you want to step it up, you're in a more sustainable situation to perpetuate it. And to your point earlier, yes, had I done your 5-minute thing, over the last 4 years, I might not be experiencing some of the back pain that I'm experiencing right now. But because I have this kind of addictive alcoholic personality, this all or nothing disposition, I would look at strength training and say, well, if I can't do 2 hours, I'm not doing it. And I really want to go trail running right now. So that's going to have to wait, as opposed to if I just did 5 or 10 minutes a day, I would be in a much better situation. But I swing like this grand pendulum. So now I'm doing all strength training and like barely, it's like I can't get, balance is, the fickle lover that I can't quite court, and that's my constant refrain. And when you say, the example of the woman in the Pilates, it's like whack-a-mole. Nobody's got all of these bases covered. And I think being gentle on yourself and understanding that that's part of what it means to be human, rather than judging yourself against a standard of like, well, if I don't have my mind, body, and heart, if I can't check all of those boxes every single day, that I'm falling short of some example that I've set for myself, then you're going to be operating at your peril.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I would say it's not about making people feel bad that they're not reaching these things. It's like I hope most of the things I do, I hope it comes from compassion. It's very much not about talking down to people. It's about very much saying, hey, look, have you thought about this? You may not have looked at it like this. A lot of people will say, Rich, oh, I've always thought I've got to do 30, 40 minutes or it doesn't count. Like, oh, if I'm going to do meditation, I've got to do 20, 25 minutes a day. What I've had with patients before, I've started them off on 1 minute a day. That's before I knew any behavioral change science. I said, okay, well, what can you agree to and commit to? I remember one lady who was suffering with menopausal symptoms, and we really together felt meditation would really help her, but she just couldn't get it going. And I said, well, what can you commit to, do you think? I said, what about 10 minutes? She goes, no. 5 minutes, no. And I said, okay, what about 1 minute? Yeah, I could do 1 minute. I said, all right, I'll make you a deal. You start doing 1 minute. I'll give you an appointment for 2 weeks, but you're committing to 1 minute a day. I'll see you in 2 weeks. And she comes back in 2 weeks and she's like, okay, cool. Actually, I started off doing that. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 minutes now. And then literally over 2-3 months, she built up to a 15-minute practice a day. The reason starting small is so important is that if I had said start off with 20 minutes, you do it for 2-3 days, you're feeling really good. Yeah, I've got this meditation thing licked. I feel great. And then the next day it's like, I've got a few emails today. I'll do it later. And I'm sort of talking from personal experience as well. And then later never comes. And before you know it, it's something you used to do. And I've just found it to be very effective. Start small, keep the bar super low, meet that bar. And if occasionally you want to go more, great. But the bar is all you have to meet. And this is very much like one of my favorite health snacks in the heart section is the tea ritual, which I do myself with my wife. And when we do it, our relationship is different. And when we don't do it, we're just a bit more distant. And it's super simple. It's just this 5-minute dedication we have to each other that each day, at some point, and for us, we've locked it in because you can't just say at some point. If you say at some point, you're not following rule number 2, which is stick it onto an existing behavior. And every behavior we do needs a trigger of some sort. That trigger can be your memory, it can be a reminder. But BJ's research has shown that the very best trigger is when you stick it onto an existing behavior, so it becomes associated with that existing habit that you have. So when our kids are in bed, which is around 8 p.m. in the UK, we will come down to the kitchen, do the washing up, and before we go on our computers or screens, we make a pot of mint tea, and the requirement is for 5 minutes, we're going to sit there and catch up. Now, Rich, the truth is, there's no timer, right? At the end of 5 minutes, I don't sort of go, hey, babe, I'm done. We've done our connection.
Instagram's waiting for me.
Yeah, right? No, some days we're still chatting in half an hour. But some days, Rich, it'll be like me or her will go, look, I've got a ton of work to do. Let's do it. But I can't stay too long. And that's fine. And sometimes it's 3-4 minutes. It's just, that's how you create the habit. That's how you create the streak. That's how you build the momentum. If one day it's an hour, brilliant. But it doesn't mean the next day has to be an hour. And the other thing I'd say, Rich, because some of your traits that you mentioned there, I kind of relate to, maybe not in the same extreme, or I don't perceive them into the same extreme, but I have, certainly in my life, been pretty back and forth with certain things. A lot of my friends would say over and over again, you have got such an addictive personality. I'm either all in or I'm all out. And, they often say authors write the books that they need to write for themselves. So maybe there's an element of that in this as well. But I have found in my own life, this has really helped me when I've kept it small, when I've kept it consistent. It's the bedrock upon which everything else sits. So it's not like I don't like going all in and making a big challenge, like, doing a big swim run that I've never done before. I love that as much as the next person. But at the same time, I have learned for me that having those 3 health snacks a day just is that, it's the bedrock. It's like my toothbrushing. It's like, these are the consistencies. These are part of my day. Like, it's just as much, it's not a negotiable. it wasn't negotiable at first, but when it's built in and it's a new habit, that's when things start to change because I don't have to think about them. And look, if you go in my kitchen right now, there are 4 charts on the wall. So I've got my charts because every time I do them, I tick them because that's a key part to celebrate your success, some way of wiring in that behavior. So at the start of the year, I chose my 3 health snacks. My wife chose her. My 2 kids chose theirs. Now they're all a bit different because, it's about choosing the ones that resonate with you. But this has been very, very effective with my children, right? So they are
That's cool.
meditating every day. Now, only for 2 minutes, right? And I'm not saying that because I'm suddenly super dad, not at all. I have been, for me, it's obviously, if I'm writing a book on this stuff, why would I not want the nearest and dearest to me to understand this stuff and experience it? So, but they've got it and they tick off each day. They've got these beads that their grandparents gave to them, which are these Indian sort of
mala beads.
Mala beads, yeah. Like I've seen you. I don't know if you got them on your wrist at the moment, but
I had them on yesterday. I took them off. Anyway.
Exactly. But they've got that. Then so they just do a few cycles of those each morning. I can't remember what the kids have got, but the heart snack is the gratitude one that we do around the dinner table. But they tick them off, and they like ticking it. So it's not the benefit that daddy has told them about that they'll get from it. They like getting their ticks, right? And that's how they're created. Look, again, like every parent, I'm trying to do the best I can. I don't know if this will lead to them doing this when they're adults. I hope it does. But I'm really trying to instill in them. I remember actually at the end of boot camp with BJ, he asked everyone in the group, okay, so what are you going to go and do with this stuff? Like, and everyone went round. There was only, I think, 8 or 10 of us there. And I said, I'm going to teach them the FOG behavior model as soon as I get home. I'm like, what better skill could there be than to teach my children how human behavior works? What are the 3 components that every human behavior needs? And I don't mean to keep going on about this, Rich, but the point is that a lot of people will hear this and they won't apply it, right? I say people, forget the book, right? Just listen to what we've said, right? Think about what is a habit you want to bring into your life, right? Let's say it's meditation, right? Fine. What can you commit to? Can you commit to 5 minutes a day? If you can't, go down to 2 minutes, right? Make it super easy where it doesn't feel intimidating. Think about where in your day it's going to go. You may need to experiment. Is it first thing when you get up? Is it with your morning coffee? Is it at the end of the day? Is it just after you do the washing up and you put the last dish on the dryer? Do you do it then before you go onto Netflix? When is that moment in your day? Is it journaling? Is it first thing in the morning? Is it a bedside journal? In which case, leave the journal next to your bed with a pencil so that every time you either wake up or you go to bed, you are being visually triggered to do that behavior. It is not difficult if we apply the rules. The problem is, and this is the human condition, we don't think the rules apply to us. We think, no, I'll rely on memory. I'll rely on motivation, even though we know motivation goes up and down. But Amazon don't rely on they've got it locked, so they know what they need to do. Yeah. They're not like humans. It's like, no, we're a machine. Make it easy, people do it. Make it hard, they don't.
The other thing is the book really doesn't talk about breaking bad habits. It's all around forming new good habits, right? It's almost like forget about the bad habits. The more you focus on creating new good habits, the more you'll crowd out those bad habits. So, one thing I'm curious about with you is like, where's, in this whack-a-mole kind of analogy of trying to, cover all of your bases, like where's the blind spot for you? Like, where's the weakness? Like, what's the hurdle or the challenge that continues to trip you up that you're trying to work on right now?
Yeah, honestly, my sugar consumption has gone through the roof over the last 2 or 3 months. It's the truth.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny. Like you talk about breaking bad habits. So one of my rules around that is just as you want to make an easy behavior you want easy to do, make a behavior you don't want hard to do. And that generally works, right? But something's happened in lockdown for me. Um, I sort of, it comes down with some sort of, I think, emotional stuff that I'm processing and sort of trying to go through, as well as the stress of the situation,
Hmm.
the lack of, travel and interacting with as many people as you would. I love my wife and my kids, and it's been great to see them so much. But I really think I've missed seeing other people out with that and bouncing off and actually coming back to the home interactions with a bit more freshness
Yeah, me
than when
too.
and I've realized that when I go out for walks or a jog, it's almost like my little treat to myself. I'll stop somewhere and get some, what you guys would call candy, some sugars. And look, I know this stuff ain't helping me, yet I'm unable to resist in that moment, right? So, and again, it might sound, oh, poor you with your sugar. No, I'm not. I'm not complaining. I understand what's driving it. I understand that I've got um, quite a few things have come up for me during lockdown in terms of, I've been on this sort of personal growth journey for about 7 years or so. I do see a therapist with regularity, not because I had, like a inverted commas, a problem per se, but more because I like to understand myself better. I like to understand what's driving my behaviors. Why do I react to certain things? Why do I not? And I found it the best journey I've ever taken is going on this self-discovery journey. And I think lockdown has supercharged that for me. So I've really been dealing with a lot of stuff from my early childhood, the way I was brought up, the way I feel love was expressed to me as a child. And I think back to thinking how I dealt with it then. And we had this this tin, this big box of sweets at home. And it's all starting to fall in. That I've sort of programmed my response to stress
Mm.
as being to soothe it with sugar. And for some reason, I had a really good few years where I wasn't really getting tempted. I wasn't really finding it, but it's really slipped back. Um, and I'm really trying to uncover what that is. And I'm making good progress. I do a form of therapy called IFS, which is called Internal Family Systems, which I've found just fantastically helpful. And I've got to say, it has changed in the last couple of weeks. Now, I don't know if that'll be long lasting or not, but honestly, the problem at the moment for me is probably sugar.
Mm.
And
Interesting.
yeah, I don't know if you're
I haven't
expecting
heard of that
answer.
mode of therapy before. What is that specifically?
So there's a therapist I've been seeing who I really respect. So it's called, as I said, IFS. It's called Internal Family Systems. I'm going to say, Rich, this may surprise you, but this is the one area of my life that I've just gone on trust. So I have not researched the hell out of this thing. I've not gone in. I purposefully gone, you know what? I'm going to trust the process. The guy who I see says he thinks it's going to be really good for me. I've just gone, okay, cool. I trust you. If you think it's going to help me, I'm doing it. And it's been transformative. So effectively, I don't know how it is sold. I don't know what the brochure says because I'm purposefully not looking, because my personality, if I start looking, I'll go on a deep dive. I'll spend every day looking at YouTube videos. I'll get the books on it. I will suddenly try and go, oh, is this the right therapy? Is it the wrong one?
Defeats the whole purpose. You have to you have to give yourself over. It's the openness that is the portal to the healing.
Exactly. So maybe it ain't even the IFS. Maybe it's the attitude I'm bringing to it, which is one of acceptance. But essentially, in the sessions that I have done, you basically, you sort of get into this sort of, I wouldn't say this state. They talk you through it. You close your eyes. You try and tap in, almost step outside your body, and so you're actually observing from the outside. And then it's almost trusting what's going to come up, and then whatever comes up, you start talking about. And so recently, a situation came up from early in childhood. And you go back into that, you try and experience what was going on. And then what's really interesting, and I think where it changes, is that, 42-year-old Rangan goes back into that scene with, let's say, 7-year-old Rangan and introduces himself and, explains who I am, that I'm come here to help, really sits down like a friend, understands what's happened, can observe it, can relate to what's been, how 7-year-old me is feeling, go through that, have a conversation, and there's a mechanism, there's a process of wrapping that up and making peace with that situation, which happened, right? Which was a real situation. And I'm sure this is a similar theme to the sort of thing people do in other treatment modalities, but this is just the way I've done it. And then you come out of it, you might revisit it yourself for a few days, but you make peace with it. And then you sort of, you close it off a certain way that the therapist guides you through. And I've had some profound, I can't believe sometimes that I'd be really worried, stressed out, something was really, really bothering me. You'd do that. And the next day or the day out, you'd wake up like a different person, feeling calm, grounded, not getting triggered by things. And I really feel, generally speaking, until this little sugar thing recently, which I actually think is a good thing, because if I'm honest, I always think I'm getting to the core of the problems, and then until you've healed that, and then you find, oh, there's a few more layers of this onion to go through.
Right, but the idea is deflating these triggers, like revisiting the traumatic event, walking through it, trying to understand the origin story behind some of these unhealthy behaviors and stripping them of their power by making peace with it in this kind of Dickensian Ghost of Christmas Past way.
Yeah, exactly. And, I've loved it. I've loved it because it's improved not only how I feel about myself. A lot of my addictive tendencies in the past, they've gone not because I'm trying to avoid them, but because I no longer feel the need to engage in them. So, before they serve the role, but because some of that stuff is getting healed,
right?
Well, I have no reason to actually engage in that behavior anymore. And it's improved not only how I feel about myself, it's made me a better father. I'm much more closer and connected with my wife, having sorted out some of this stuff myself. I feel I'm a much better doctor. I feel I'm better able to, you can really see these patterns in patients now so clearly. And I really feel a lot of the time with patients now, I go to the emotional stuff a lot earlier than I used to, because you can see the root of what's really going on here.
Once we get past the age of 30, we can lose up to 5% of our muscle mass every 10 years. It's a significant problem. So I'm always encouraging my patients to do more strength training. But the problem is, many people find it too expensive or too difficult to get to a gym. And that's why I created something that I call a 5-minute kitchen workout. It's become a huge hit with my patients. And I've done it basically to try and help my patients get some strength training in around their busy lives. I go through this in detail in my book, The 4-Pillar Plan. But this video is designed to show you how you do the 5-minute kitchen workout in your own kitchen. The great thing about this workout is that you can do it whether you're 20 years old or whether you're 80 years old. And it can be modified for different strength and different mobility levels. Now, it's just a guide. You can tweak it as you see fit, but I'm going to go through it as it is currently written in my book. The first exercise is squats. Now, squats are a great all-body exercise for strength and mobility. There are so many different ways of doing it to suit your strength level. The first thing I'd suggest is you hold on to something like this worktop and just start bending your knees, lowering them. Go as far down as you feel comfortable, and aim to do about 5 to 10. You could see a door handle. You could hold onto the door handle with one arm or two arms, and again, just start to squat down. Try and keep your back straight and go down as far as you feel comfortable. Some of you will only be able to go down a small amount like this, and that's absolutely fine. Whatever you feel comfortable with, start there. But as you get better and really good, you can actually hold on to something like this and think about doing it on one leg. The point is, in the comfort of your own kitchen, you can do a workout at so many different levels. The next exercise are calf raises. So this is basically a really good workout for your lower limbs. And again, you can actually do these without holding on if you feel able to. So I would just go up and down, onto my tiptoes and down, as many times as I can. Again, I normally say go for about 5 to 10. Now, if you need support, that's absolutely fine as well. You can hold on to a worktop. Hold on as you do your calf raises. Once you feel comfortable doing that, you can actually move out to the kitchen and go to your bottom staircase, which is where I am now. And actually just hold onto the stair rail. Actually lay yourself down and go all the way up. Go a bit lower than you can when you're just on the floor. Actually go a little bit higher as well. So you get a much bigger range of motion. It's a bit more of a workout. So this is just a simple way of actually making the exercise a little bit harder and just pushing it a little bit further. The next exercise is press-ups. Now press-ups can actually be a really challenging exercise to do if you go straight onto the floor. So with many of my patients, I start against a wall. So what you do is you pop your hands down roughly shoulder width, or maybe slightly wider than shoulder width apart, and just start lowering your chest down towards the wall. You can play around with your hand position a bit so you feel comfortable. Try and keep your back straight as you're doing it. And again, I'd aim for about 5 to 10. Again, if you can only do 2, start with 2. And as you keep working out, as you keep progressing it, very soon you'll be able to build up. So that's an easy place to start, but you can also make it a little bit trickier. So again, pop your hands down. Shoulder width apart is probably a good guide, but you can actually play around with that. Keep your back straight, keep your body straight, and then just start lowering your chest down. And again, I'd say aim to do about 5 to 10. It's actually quite challenging to do that, and you get a really nice workout for your chest and for your arms. Now, as you get stronger, you can start going down. You can even pull in a chair, get onto a chair. Again, the lower you put your hands, the harder you make it. So again, that's another way you can do it. And you can actually go down onto the floor. The point is, you can start at your current strength level and work up as you get stronger. The next exercise are triceps dips. So what you can do is place your hands on a kitchen worktop to start with and start lowering your elbows behind you. It's a great exercise for your arms and it's a fantastic way of working on your strength. Now, I would aim for 5 to 10 there. And as you get better, you can start making it more difficult for yourself. You can start doing it on a dining room chair, and once you've mastered that, you can even go onto the floor. The key is to do it where you feel comfortable at a pace and at a strength level that's good for you. The final exercise in this sequence are lunges. Now, lunges are a very well-known body weight exercise. Now, the key here is that you can do it freestanding or you can hold on. So I'll just hold on to demonstrate how we do that. So hold on to something and just put one leg forward and bend the knee. So this is me doing my right leg. You don't need to hold on. You can actually do it without holding on. As you get stronger, you feel more comfortable. I'd say maybe do about 5 to 10 on each leg. So I'm going to just do my left leg now. Try and keep your torso upright if you can. And bend as far down with that knee as you feel comfortable. Now, the thing with lunges is once you get good at that, you can actually start looking around and adding things in. So, I'm in a kitchen, but I can grab something like a bottle of olive oil. This is a full one, it's not open yet. So what you can actually do is go do the lunge, but with a side rotation. Okay, and you can rotate to either side. It's just another way of actually making it a little bit more fun and challenging yourself and adding on another movement. I can see I've got a couple of cans here of butter beans. Again, you can do something different. You can actually do a lunge and put your hands up, with some cans. It's actually amazing how tiring this workout can be. Now, I've just spent a few minutes going through those exercises. I'm actually in my own clothes. I've not had to get changed. I've not had to get any special equipment. I've actually used olive oil and butter beans and just things that are lying around. And I think that's the beauty of it. In fact, many times in my surgery room, I've actually been on my surgery table or on the floor with patients, actually showing them how they can do this. I really would encourage you to give this a try at home. It helps me, and I know it can help you.
If you enjoyed that conversation, I think you are going to love the one I had with the incredible immunologist Jenna Machoki, all about the immune system. It's right there, so give it a click and let me know what you think. And click here to download my free breathing PDF.
Gut bugs, the microbiota, are one of the key educators of the immune system.